Here we are with my latest completion of a customer quilt. My customer named this quilt Amish with a Twist. It is so awesome. So instead of filming the quilting of this, I didn't do that this time for a couple of reasons. First of all, black fabric it's nearly impossible to get black fabric to show up, the quilting of it to show up on a video. And the second thing is that my customers decided to do all the quilting in those colorful, beautiful blocks in matching colors. So the number of stops and starts with changing threads, there was very little continuous quilting in those blocks, so most of the video time would have taken up with me starting and stopping threads. So on this quilt, I thought I would just show you what I did and explain how I did it using the finished quilt. So let's take a look. The first thing I did on this beauty was quilt these beautiful borders. These borders are quite wide. I'd say a good 14 inches, if not more. And we started out by quilting my dividing lines. As you know from my previous videos, I am big on taking a big space and dividing it into smaller spaces. And in this case, the first dividing line was right here, roughly about the center of where the stem came out, because the stem pretty much cuts this border in half. So we did some linear divisions. We basically have 3 sections on this part. Section 1, Section 2, Section 3. This is 1.5 inches with an echo, 1.5 inches with the echo, both echoes going to the inside, and another 1.5 inches with the echo going out. And then on this upper half, I did a feather with an Amish curl on the end, and you saw 2 of these borders didn't have any applique. So to make that kind of as interesting as the borders with the applique, I put, Amish Curling Feathers into these non-applique borders. So here we are back in this corner, and I don't know if you've seen a tool like this. It's a gauge, a Tailors gauge. I'll put a link to it in the description. I bought this on Amazon. It's the back side. Tailors use this. See, it's got all kinds of different ruler markings. I don't use those. I use these jagged little teeth on the end. And basically, I know I want 3 sections here. So I'm going to drop this, and there's my 3 sections. And I basically use chalk. Oh, 3. Sorry. I'll get it together. It's kind of, okay. So there we are. I'm going to use that. So there's my 3 sections. So I have, it turned out to be 1.5 inches, but it doesn't matter. I don't like to have to measure. So I basically use this gauge to keep me from having to measure. And I quilted this echo on the bottom here. And then I quilted that line. And then I quilted that line. And then I quilted that line. That gave me my 3 distinct sections, and then after that I put in my echo lines, which I already had that one. Because I want this a smaller channel, I made this from these two lines, the echo go into this channel to reduce the size. And then I echoed on the outside of the last channel. And that gave me this beautiful division. And then, okay, hold on a minute here. So there's the book that I used for my border design, in this case, for the narrow borders, not the feathers, the narrow borders. Okay, so I just showed you Margaret Solomon Gunn's book on narrow borders, and that's where I got the idea for this. I love doing these. Now for the Amish feathers, I used an awesome tool. This is a Long Lily Lines by Beth Ann Nemish. And I basically used, how did I use that? Oh, like this. So that's how I got that angle. And then I'd flip it and use it just like that to get that curve. And then I'd flip it again and get that curve, basically start here, follow the curve all the way down and around. And that's how I did the curling part of the feather. And then the rest of the feather to the end is pretty much just wavy. So once I left that last feather, I used this Handy Gadgets Wave A and I would just scoot it along. So I ended there, I would scoot it over, and I would continue. Start on this end, run the presser foot all the way to that end, come to a stop, move my ruler, and continue on all the way down to the end until I got like somewhere in here, and then I would put the Lily Lines ruler back on to get this lovely curve. And I think, well, when I do a spine on a feather, I think if the spine is done very well, i.e. with a ruler, then doing the feathers themselves freehand will make it all look really incredible. So how do you tie in this applique with the border design? So what I did there is just use a fill as a transition point. And this is something that's done a lot if you're familiar with graffiti quilting, where you do a fill and you go a graffiti type fill, you go from one fill type to the next, into a quilt motif, back into a different fill. It's really quite cool. So since we have piano key piecing in one of the borders, I took that as inspiration for doing a piano key quilting on the outside, because then that gives a lot of wiggle room. And this quilt is 86 by 103. This is a big quilt. So anywhere where I can reduce having to do pebbles, which take an enormously long amount of time. Harvey, don't help. Okay, we're back. Got a visit from one of my dogs. He bombarded through the baby gate. Anyway, what I was saying about graffiti quilting. So I basically like the idea of using the piano key piecing and doing that also in the quilting. I thought that would tie in quite nicely. And I did those piano keys on the outside all around, even around the block on the outside. And then used, because I echoed everything in the quilt, all these beautiful sashings, I decided to also echo the applique and then use the pebbles quilting around that and just kind of merging it into where my lines end. And then using the pebbles on as a filler on the inside of this feather with some dense scribbling. You can see there, right next to the feather, just to punch that down as much as possible so that this feather would pop up and out as much as possible. But I like that transition. I think that looks really cool. So that was pretty much it for the borders. It was a lot. And then to mirror to continue our theme of feathers that were in the border, I did the sashings the same way. Now the border feathers were done with charcoal thread, and the background fill, the piano keys, the lines, the pebbles, the echoes, the piano keys, that was all done in black thread. But all the feather work was done in charcoal thread because I wanted it to show up. In these big empty, solid black borders, I could let my quilting shine. So that's why we chose the charcoal thread instead of black thread, because then it would have disappeared. Now in the body of this quilt, different story. We've got all these beautiful bright blocks that needed to shine, and the sashings and the quilting in my sashing really needed to take a back seat. So where we still did the feathers, we did black thread with the feathers. And that turned out really cool. So you can see the texture, you can see that there's awesome quilting there, but it doesn't overpower the beautiful piecing and quilting in the piecing. And because this is all solid fabrics, I was very thankful that my customers wanted awesome quilting in these blocks. And pretty much throughout these blocks, the thread color matches the fabric color. So it took a while. It wasn't so much the changing the thread colors, but the constant stops and starts, because I didn't want to travel over a different color. So there were, starts and stops constantly. But I think it turned out really, really cool. Oh, excuse me, I was down on the floor. Isn't that neat? Cool designs. It was fun picking different designs for these blocks. And the corner blocks. So there you have it. Amish with a twist. Definitely a stunningly beautiful quilt. Thank you.